So what I'd like to share today is just a simple message of how to connect to a MySQL database. First, I'm going to just show you really how to manage several MySQL databases using your .my.cnf file in your let's see, in your home directory. If you'll put a .my.cnf in there, you can specify some defaults so you don't have to go through the trouble of the long connection string every time when you're connecting to a MySQL database from the command line. So I've got a sanitized .my.cnf in my temp directory just to show you what it's like. So first, client. Well, they're all led, all these different stanzas are led by a client. So anything after this, client will use as a kind of an identifier later on when we run MySQL. So notice here that by default I'm connecting to port 6603 as opposed to the general 3306 that MySQL generally uses. And of course, if I wanted to stray from that, I could change that in the subsequent directives. This first one, client, would apply to any of these others unless I override it within the other. I could put port 6603 or 3306 in the client snag dev stanza. I can specify a username, or I could have put, if my username is the same for all the databases, I could put it up here in the client section. Same with host, same with password and whatnot. But so I've got two different database servers defined here. And so what I'll go ahead and do is show you how that works. I'm going to connect to a dev server. Mine, I'm calling it general dev. So you use the MySQL command with the defaults --defaults -group -suffix. So this is the suffix here, snag prod R2, for example. And in this case, I'm using general dev. So in my real .my.cnf, I have one called client general dev. And I'm going to connect to a database called Snapshot. So there you go. You see that in mine, of course, these are not real passwords that you're seeing, but I didn't have to type in any password or anything. And there I'm connected to that database, and I'm ready to go. I'm not going to show you the tables or anything. With just a couple seconds to go, I'd like to show you another way to connect to a database, but through an SSH tunnel. We'll see if I can actually pull that off in a quick fashion. So I'm going to run, now I'm on my desktop, not in the same network as the database server. And come to think of it, I'm not going to actually connect to the database. I'm going to telnet to it so that, yeah, hey. So I'm not going to, I don't have my .my.cnf set up here on this laptop. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to try to create an SSH tunnel with 3306.
Can you describe the arguments that you're passing in?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I'm getting nervous about sharing too many details. My database server. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to create a tunnel with the -L argument. I'm specifying my local port of 3306, the remote port or the remote server name that I want to get to, and then the port on the server that I want to reach. And then I'm going to go through some gateway host bastionhost.com. So this some gateway host bastion host is the host that I want to connect through. I have maybe an SSH key or a username and password that I can log into this guy, and this host is on the same network as the database server, or at least it has permissions across the network somehow to get to my database server name.com. And obviously that's not going to work because I'm chickening out of giving you real host names here. But then once that succeeds in connecting, then I could do MySQL -h local. Actually, I may need to do 127.0.0.1 and then port. Well, I'll just be using the default port of 3306, and it'll translate through this some gateway bastion host and reach my database server name.com on 6603. And then I may specify my database. Of course, that didn't work. I don't even have MySQL installed. Sorry about that. But it would connect locally through the SSH tunnel out to that remote some gateway bastion host to the database server, and that would also connect you to the MySQL database, so that you could say run some local application, test it on your desktop while connecting to a real database server out there on the internet somewhere. And that's it. I guess one last thing I wanted to point out was that when you connect to 127.0.0.1, it connects over TCP, and if you connect to localhost, it will try to connect to a MySQL socket file instead of over TCP. And that's it. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.